Good evening and welcome to tonight's Hearthstone half hour, or as it is on a Tuesday, it's an Arena Tuesday, meaning that we'll be running a bit longer. I'm Hammy, this is FailCraft Casts, hope you're well and good. And on Tuesdays we always do a pick your own arena. So you folks on Twitter earlier today decided to pick between Shaman, Warrior and Priest, and you guys went for Priest, so we're going to be picking Priest Arena today. Live on twitch.tv/FailCraftCast. If you're on YouTube, welcome also, come join us live sometime, be good to have you with us. So without further ado, let's jump on in. And we always run through three kind of rough rules, I would say, to make sure that our arena is being picked in a reasonably good fashion. Now, how do we do that? Number one, we always review our cards often, so we generally pick sort of 2, maybe 3 review points from 1 through 30. So let's say, for example, 12 cards, 20 cards, and 24 cards. There you go. What that means is that as we're checking our cards very regularly, it means that we can try and pick cards based on what we have already, try and see if we have some kind of strategy, some kind of deck theme developing, and it means that by reviewing regularly we don't just get to the end and find out that we've got 30 cards that are all great on their own but not great together. So that's our first basic principle that we go by. Number two, when we do that card check, we take a look at mana curve, and we also take a look at the amount of spells and the amount of minions that we have. So mana curve, a very simple way of taking a look, and if we just take a look on the screen in the middle there, seeing how your deck is developing. Do you have, for example, a bunch of mid-game cards? Do you have a lot of stuff in that 4 or 5 mana slot? Do you have a lot of stuff in the 0 to 2 or 3 mana slot? If you've got a lot of stuff in the middle kind of slots, then perhaps you're trying to win in the middle of the game, for example. If you've got a lot of 1, 2, 3 mana cards, then you might be trying to rush, might be trying to really win in the early game. So a very basic sort of finger in the wind measure, but just a way of knowing roughly how your deck's developing at that point. Also, spells versus minions, very simple one. If you've got a lot of minions, you're probably going to be trying to play a nice, strong, solid minion every turn that's going to be getting the board more and more in your favour. If you've got a lot of spells, maybe you're going to be playing a bit more control-y, trying to zap things off the table and perhaps have a more spell-heavy kind of gameplay. So again, very rough measures, but when you put all of these together, it helps you understand how you're picking your arena deck and roughly where it might be going. Final rule, number 3. We take a look, turn by turn, mana by mana, and basically just run through that deck list. And by running through the deck list, you can take a look and see very simply again on every single turn, what can you roughly be doing? Are you going to be playing minions every turn? Is there perhaps a hole there in combination with looking at your mana curve where you feel that you might need to perhaps pick a particular kind of card, a particular kind of mana level of cards, so that you've got a smooth flow, a smooth curve? Generally speaking, if I can play a good card, a big card, or a significant card every turn in Arena, I'm setting myself up well. Because of the format being draft and being limited rather than the constructed ladder decks where anyone can build whatever they like, generally just being able to keep playing and keeping doing stuff is generally pretty handy. So those are our 3 rules. On Twitter today, you folks have voted for Priest. A big welcome to Sparta, C-Sedge, great to see you, and then also PG and Umbra, so very good to see you all. So we now have Priest. You guys voted for Priests. Randuin Win is not going to let us know, and we dive on in. So first we have an Angry Chicken, as my typing away in chat goes a little bit pear-shaped. An Angry Chicken, a Twilight Drake, or a Mana Addict. So we've gone through our rules. I'm going to be typing away, do apologise for that, so the folks in chat can see what we're going to be picking and decide what they want to go for. If they're in a good mood, then we have maybe a competitive deck. If they're in a fun mood, if they're in a little bit of a let's make Hammy suffer today mood, or let's just have some fun, absolutely fine too. We might be seeing a lot of Angry Chickens, particularly because we're playing Priest, I'm just saying. So Angry Chicken, Twilight Drake and Mana Addict. The chicken is a chicken. We've played an all-powerful chicken priest deck that revolves around buffing chicken health as high as possible, and then using a combination of Divine Spirit and Inner Fire to make a huge wombo combo. I think we had a 21 health, 21 attack chicken. So it's possible, but hard. Twilight Drake, Battlecry, gain +1 health for each card in your hand. If if you can combo that with something like a Sun Fury Protector or maybe a Defender of Argus, then that will be very, very handy. Big tanks, generally speaking, if you can play that when you've got a lot of cards in hand, it will make a very big war, or it's just a big trading minion. With that 4 attack, you can trade lots of little minions off if it's got a big health value, and as a priest we can heal, so that's good too. Mana Addict, whenever you cast a spell, gain 2 attack this turn, generally best if you've got lots of small value spells. So, if I was playing a spare parts deck, and I had lots of 1 mana spells, I could play a Mana Addict and then 3 or 4 spare parts later in the game, and then suddenly I'd have a huge, dangerous Mana Addict. But situational, I would say. What do people in chat fancy? Chicken Drake, chicken addicts, chicken, pick the chicken. We've got chickens, we've got Drake, and we've got addict. We've got a split straight down the middle. The chat is divided. A chat divided is a sad chat. What kind of mood are we in today? Do you know what? Because I get streamer's choice, if the chat vote is split, I always go streamer's choice. I'm going to start off with a Drake. I'm sure we'll get some more fun cards further down the road, and I'm sure there'll be disappointment and dismay that the chicken was not the immediate go-to choice. Or Temple Enforcer, a Mind Vision or a Mind Blast. Mind Blast, 5 damage to enemy hero. Good nuke, very, very mana efficient. Remember, of course, that I do believe a Fireball for a mage is a 6 damage spell for 4 mana, so 5 mana for 2, very good indeed. However, you can only do this to the enemy hero, so that is Mind Blast. Mind Vision, a random card in your opponent's hand into your hand. Not awful, not quite as good as a Priest's Thought Steal, of course, which is 2 random cards from your opponent's deck, rather than 1 from your opponent's hand. But still not too bad in Arena, you might be able to fish out something useful. Last but not least, the Temple Enforcer, good as a late game card, giving a friendly minion plus 3 health as a battle cry. Good for buffing up minions, making them very, very strong. And then 666, the number of the beast, but also the number of a very balanced card when it comes to attack and health and mana cost and a very strong ability. So we can do a lot worse than pick a Temple Enforcer. Chicken, Mind Vision, and Mind Vision, it looks as though that Mind Vision has got the nods. Mind Vision it is. We're going to be stealing things from our opponents, and it's going to be very exciting. Nothing like a little bit of randomness, and priests have randomness in spades. Stormpike Commando, Dark Iron Dwarf, or Shrinkmeister. So, the Stormpike Commando, 4 attack, 2 health, giving a battle cry of 2 damage. 5 mana, the health stat is a little undervalued, but then you get that battle cry, which that could take out a minion, could perhaps ping away a Divine Shield. Not quite as dangerous as the 3 damage that comes from the Fire Elemental Shamans have, but not too bad. If that stays alive for a turn, 4 attack will let it trade something, so not bad. Dark Iron Dwarf. When we do arenas, we sort of talk about something kind of like a solid minion test. So it's like, if there's nothing else to pick, what's the most solid minion? What's just going to fill that function that we talked about earlier of playing a good minion on a turn? Dark Iron Dwarf is a very good example, very much like that Temple Enforcer we looked at. 4 mana, 4 attack, 4 health, it's all very nicely balanced out in terms of its stats, and then it's got a good battle cry, so the card text is actually beneficial as well as having balanced stats. A minion 2+ attack this turn, you will be able to either attack for more damage, or perhaps trade a smaller one of your minions for a larger, more expensive version that your opponent has. So that's mana efficiency, that's making good trades, that's helping you control the table. 4 attack, 4 health, you can probably trade something there too. Last but not least, the Shrinkmeister, new with Goblins vs. Gnomes, a very good card, because priests have a lot of cards when you think about the, I'm going to call it the Cabal Priest, I can't remember its name, but it's the one that nicks a minion which has 2 or less attack. So you battle cry with a Shrinkmeister, you shrink a minion's attack down for a turn, and then you can steal it with the Cabal Shadow Priest. Perhaps. Anyway, and again, it's a solid minion. 2 attack, 2 mana, 3 attack, 2 health. Perfectly good early game stats, which will be very, very nasty indeed. Dark Iron Shrinkmeister. I don't know what Shrinkmeister is, but I want it, says PG. Fair enough. The vote is with Shrinkmeister, and Shrinkmeister we shall have. Next we have a Spellbreaker. A Tauren Warrior. What a silence. Spellbreaker. 4 attack, 3 health. Reasonable stats, health a little bit low for that 4 mana level, but with a battle cry of silencing a minion, nasty card text, spellbreak it, nasty tank in the way, spellbreak it. Silence is always nice to have in your pocket. This or a Iron Beak Owl, very, very good indeed. Taunt Warrior, again this is a solid minion. Taunt and Rage plus 3 attack. That becomes a 2 attack, 3 health minion into a 5 attack, 2 health minion if it takes 1 damage. Of course, if it's destroyed immediately, that Enrage never gets to trigger. It's also a tank as well, so it will sponge up some damage in the early game. Not brilliant, not awful. Finally, Silence. Silence a minion for 0. Yes, very useful. Silencers are good, as we just discussed, but generally speaking, people like to go for, in most cases, something that will give you a couple of different benefits. And the other different benefit that you'll get is having a minion on the table that you can make some trades with. Silence useful cards, Silence and Spellbreaker. People feel like some Silence is okay. We're going for a 0 mana Silence. Interesting pick. Next up we have a Lightspawn, we have an Ogre Brute, and a Dark Iron Dwarf. So we've already covered the Dark Iron Dwarf, not going to need to cover that twice. Lightspawn, this minion's attack is always equal to its health. If we buff the health of this minion, then hey, it gets even more attack. Of course, if we then take damage as this minion, its attack is reduced. So it needs healing. Very rarely will it stay at 5/5 for a long particular period of time. You heal it up, it gets bigger. There are of course priest cards in a Fire Divine Spirit. We have seen neither, but doubling a minion's health, Lightspawn gets a great benefit from that, for example. So pretty good priest card, solid minion for our purposes in this arena. Ogre Brutes, I really like this card. With Goblins versus Gnomes, the Ogre mechanic for any Ogre cards has a 50% chance of attacking the wrong enemy, pretty much. But on turn 3 or turn 2, if you go second and have a coin, very, very solid. 4 attack, 4 health. If that does not hit your opponent to the face, then you're clearing away small early game minions using it. So nothing wrong with an Ogre Brute in some ranked and ladder decks. So in arena, we don't mind it too much. Very solid minion indeed. Dwarf, I see Ogre, Ogre, Ogre. That's a couple of Ogres. It looks like Ogre has got the vote. Ogre it is. Very nice. Next we have a Sun Fury Protector, a Master Swordsmith, or an injured Blade Master. So Sun Fury Protector, the friend of all taunting and tanking cards, giving adjacent minions taunt. You can produce 2 tanks from absolutely nowhere. So very good, particularly good if we have our Twilight Drake, as we mentioned earlier. Those two might go very nicely together. Master Swordsmith, at the end of your turn, give another random friendly minion 1 attack. Good if you can put it up behind big tanks. Otherwise it's going to be focused, probably zapped away by your opponent quite quickly, but not too bad. Injured Blade Master, great in priest constructed decks. Generally remember, priests have Circle of Healing, the 0 mana cost, restore 4 health to all minions on the table card. So you injure Blade Master and you heal it up, preferably when there are no opponent minions who are damaged. But remember, we've still got our hero power of healing up for 2, so that could be pretty solid as well. What are you fancying? Blade Master and Sun Fury. People fancying the Blade Master to make the trades. A very solid mid-game card there. Blade Master pretty much getting a unanimous vote. We've got a Salty Dog, a Southsea Deckhand, or a Dire Wolf Alpha. The Salty Dog, much beloved by people who are good with their Twitch emotes. 7 attack, 4 health. The health makes it very, very vulnerable to removal. If you throw that down, your opponent will try and get rid of it, and at 4 health, chances are turn 5 or 6, given that it's 5 mana, the earliest it could show up, they're probably going to be able to do that unless you have tanks. Maybe they have fireballs, spells, depending on their class. So it's a gamble unless you can buff its health. Southsea Deckhand, charge when you have a weapon equipped, great in weapon decks, but we're a priest, we do not pack weapons at this point in time. So mixed, probably mixed at best utility for us. And then Direwolf Alpha, adjacent minions having 1 attack, 2 attack, 2 health, 2 mana minion, definition of solid. If you've got little minions, if you've got big minions in the late game, throw that down. And very much like the Dark Iron Dwarf, you're getting more for less, which is always a good thing. Salt Shaker, Direwolf Alpha, Salty Doge. Direwolf, it looks like an alpha is coming through. In terms of chat votes, I'm going to see if anyone else jumps in, maybe goes for something a little bit on the different side. Maybe I've just crashed my Twitch chat by accident. Nah, it's all good. Fabulous. It looks like an alpha gets the nod. Next, priests don't have a weapon yet, says Umbra Demo. Well, of course, priests pack staves and stuffs, they pack Benediction, my Benediction priest back in vanilla days of World of Warcraft, so I fully know it would be great if priests had staves or staffs, and mages as well. That is an interesting thing you say there. Maybe that could be something that gets introduced in future. All classes have weapons or orbs or things that they hold in their hands in some way or another. So, Thoughtsteel, Nightblade, and Mind Control. Thoughtsteel we were talking about earlier. Copy 2 cards from your opponent's deck and put them into your hand. Very hard to resist in Arena. Who knows what you're going to get? It's a big lottery. Nightblade, Mindblade. I'm getting Mindblade and Night Control. 2 very different things. 3 damage to enemy hero, 4 attack, 4 health, 5 mana. This is a solid card in terms of doing good damage, reasonable stats for its mana cost. It's going to be doing a purpose. And then, last but not least, Mind Control. Mind Control, if we survive till turn 10, it could win us the game. In most arenas, you generally are doing well if it becomes a big late game slugfest. People tend to go, I would say, with earlier to mid-game-ish cards and win styles. But Mind Control is a very good card in itself. Thoughtsteel, it's looking like a Thoughtsteel. Next we have a Thralmar, Farseer, a Holy Smite, and again a South Sea Deckhand. When Hearthstone in the arena serves up those cards and says, I really want you to pick those today. We've already covered the Deckhand. Smite, 1 mana, 2 damage, nothing much else to say about that. Good for pinging away minions in the early game, good for perhaps picking off wounded minions in the mid to late game. If we have spell damage, it gets even better of course, so not too bad. Then Thralmar Farseer, Wind Fury, 2 attack, 3 health. If we can keep that on the table for 1 turn, it is of course swinging twice per turn, so that's going to be 4 damage rather than 2. And it's 2 separate attacks, so we can attack numerous minions if we want. Solid-ish enough minion, I would say, for the 3 cost. Looking like perhaps people are going for some smite here. Is it going to be a smite? It's looking like a smite. I smite thee. And hello to Thrash and all of you folks joining us live. Good to have you with us. That's looking like a smite. Smite it is. Next we have a Shadow Madness. We have a Knife Juggler or a Master Swordsmith. Cover the Master Swordsmith, won't cover that again. Knife Juggler, after you summon a minion, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. 2/3/2, solid minion stats already. Amazing ability that's used and abused in so many different ways in Constructed. In Arena, not so bad. Generally best if you can flood a bunch of minions down after it so you get lots of chip damage. It will become a number 1 target for your opponent as soon as it hits the table, most likely, particularly in the early game. So we could make use of it. Last but not least, Shadow Madness. Gain control of an enemy minion with 3 or less attack until the end of turn. Expensive, a little at 4 mana, but if you can use it to take one of your opponent's minions and destroy another one of your opponent's minions, or even better, if you can steal one of your opponent's minions and then make sure that those minions destroy each other, then that 4 mana that sounds expensive suddenly becomes very mana efficient. If I use my 4 mana Shadow Magnus to take at least 4 mana's worth of minions away, and even better if I get 2 minions perhaps rather than 1 of my opponents to be destroyed, it's a swinging tempo. It means that you can grab control of the board, your opponent's 2 minions down from before in an ideal situation. Very good place to be in. So we have Shadow Madness, Knife Juggler, Shadow Madness. I think that's a Shadow Madness vote. Holy Nova, Velen's Chosen, and Mechanical Yeti. So we have Holy Nova, 2 damage to all enemies, restoring 2 health to all friendly characters. The Priest, area of effect ability. A bit of healing always good as well. We don't have that Northshire Cleric, of course, that priests value so much, that helps us draw cards when we heal. But if we're playing a big rush deck, then this is certainly going to soften up the board, make sure that we can potentially clear the board. If we are playing a Paladin with lots of 1/1 tokens, a Shaman with lots of small totems, Holy Nova is going to do a job, so strong card. And even, I'm not going to say even strong, I'm going to say just as good in a different situation card, Velen's Chosen. I love this buff actually with Goblins versus Gnomes. You give a minion +2/+4, 2 attack and 4 health, and spell damage +1 for 3 mana. It makes nasty minions almost unremovable, and it makes small minions suddenly very, very threatening indeed. So that spell damage also comes in handy. great card too. Last but not least, the Mech Yeti. It is a Chillwind Yeti, but it's got that death rattle and it's a mech. Very, very solid card. You'll see it pop up in all kinds of mech decks on the ladder at this point in time. Okay, Holy Nova, 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 Nova. No arguments with Nova. We are almost at 12 cards, so we're going to be doing our first card review, our first deck review in a second or two, as we take a look at the Silverhand Knight, the Tinkertown Technician, and the Temple Enforcer. So, Silverhand Knight, it's a 2 for 1, and the battle cry of summoning a 2/2 Squire is very good indeed. So, with 4 attack and 4 health, also a very strong minion. Can make some trades as well, so solid for the 5 mana cost. Tinkertown Tech, great if we have mechs. That 3/3 becomes a 4 attack, 4 health, then you get a spare part. We have a new mix, so not bad, but not really in synergy with our deck at the moment. Doesn't mean, of course, we won't pick more mechs later, so up to you. And then we've already covered the Temple Enforcer. We turn down one of these. Do you want to grab a second one? Entirely up to you. It is looking like I see a vote for Silverhand. Is it going to be a Silverhand Knight? Tinkertown. Those having a bit of fun going for a little Tinkertown draft. And last but not least, is it going to be a Temple Enforcer? We have a bit of a split chat at the moment. Temple Enforcer, straight split, straight down the middle. If there is no deciding vote, then I'm going to jump on in, grab a little Streamer's Choice, and see what we can fashion from this. I'll leave you folks to pick the next card while we do our first deck review. And then it's looking to me like, the decisive choice comes in, Enforcer is there. So while I quickly describe these cards, I'll let people vote, and then we will do our first deck review. Right, I'm going to deal with Magma Rager first, commonly known from BlizzCon 2014, the Hearthstone panel. They said that if you look at all of the cards in Hearthstone, and you look at the statistical probability of not winning a game after playing a card, then the highest probability of not winning a game after playing a card, Magma Rager is the card that you would play. So 5 attack, 1 health, you cannot buff the health of this thing, it's going to get removed rather fast. I think that's all I need to say about it. Next is Mad Scientist. Death Rattler, putting a secret from your deck into the battlefield, 2/2/2, great for paladins, for mages, for hunters, for all of these secret bearing classes, of which priest is not one. So, solid minion. But even better if you're a secret bearing class. And then last but not least, the Stormwind Knight. You can get down for the king, 2 attack and 5 health. For the 4 mana, kind of balanced out with the charge. This is not bad if you can buff up its attack, otherwise it's pretty much used for removing small minions in draft. In this kind of arena mode, you can do some good trades with it rather than do too much to your opponent's face. Okay, so our first deck review point, while folk in chat and live decide to debate on that card, let's do our review. Rule number 1, we're reviewing. Rule number 2, let's take a look at mana curve and spells against minions. Our mana curve is pretty even, nothing much to write home about there in terms of any exceptional spikes, peaks or troughs or anything similar. We can pretty much play something every turn so far, it looks like. Maybe a little peak in the middle at 3 and 4. Spells against minions, I have Silence, Smite and Mind Vision and Thought Steal. And a Shadow Madness. Wow, 5 spells, 7 minions. So we've got a bit of a mix here so far. Turn by turn, playthrough is number 3. Well, Silence can be played whenever to remove a nasty threat. Smite, ditto for that. Ditto for Mind Vision, but happy to play that in the early game to get card draw. Direwolf, Shrinkmeister, we can throw these down pretty much as is, but Direwolf would probably be better when we've got at least 2 minions on the table to play in the middle of those to give the attack buff. Shrinkmeister can just go down whenever, pretty much. We don't have any mind-controlling cards that rely on that -2 attack, otherwise Shrinkmeister would probably become a late-game card. Thought Steal, again, play it whenever, grab cards. Injured Blade Master, pretty much play as we see. Same with Ogre Brute. Same with Shadow Madness to a point, but if we can save it to the late game and make that beneficial 2 talking about, then that's the best use of that 4 mana. Twilight Drake, play as we see, preferably of course when we've got a lot of cards in our hand, otherwise a 4/1 Twilight Drake is not really worth 4 mana. A 4/9 Twilight Drake is very much worth 4 mana. Holy Nova, strafing the table away when we need to, and then Temple Enforcer, pretty much play as we see and buff whatever is on the table at that point in time. So, No massive conclusions so far, but we can see we've got a reasonably even mana spread, we've got a reasonable split of spells and minions, and when we do our next deck review at say 20 cards, then we'll see how we're getting on then. Going back to our draft, we see Stormwind Knight, and welcome to Mouldy joining us live. How are you, sir? Good to have you with us. So Stormwind Knight for the king, and it's looking like Stormwind Knight has got our vote. Next we have a Worgen Infiltrator, a Stone Splinter Trog, or a Dalaran Mage. Worgen Infiltrator, throw it down for 1 mana, it will probably stay alive unless your opponent has area of effect damage. Whirlwinds for the warriors, Holy Navers for the priests, so on and so forth. Or Baron Geddon if they're very lucky in Arena. Otherwise it'll pop out and do some damage. Trogzor, Trog no stupid. The Trog cards are new with Goblins versus Gnomes, and they're actually pretty good. They're all, for their mana cost, pretty solid. So whenever your opponent casts a spell, this 2 attack 3 minion gains 1 attack. You can play it as a solid minion. If your opponent casts spells, it could get nasty. So pretty good for the 2 slot. Then the Dalaran Mage, spell damage of +1, weighed out with a measly 1 attack and 4 health. That means it might stick around for a bit. This is kind of, I'd say, Sunfu Protector, Defender of Argus. It's almost tank fodder, where if you've got a spell damage deck, it'll give you that spell damage. But it's not going to be trading with any other minions in the early game. You're not going to be able to use it really to keep the table clear just through its solid stats alone. So, Trog. Universal Trog. Next we have a Mini Mage. Ooh, a Clockwork Giant, or a Junkbots. So we have 3 Goblins versus Gnomes options here. The Mini Mage is very much like our Worgen that we saw. The stealth keeps it alive, but spell damage +1 is great. It can pop out and do 4 damage, all well and good. But the problem is that 1 health, again, very vulnerable to area of effect damage. Anything that does damage to opposing minions, stealth protects it from direct attacks, but doesn't hide it away from that AoE. Clockwork Giant, tempting, costs 1 less for each card in your opponent's hand. The real question is your opponent going to be cycling cards through their hand, or are they going to build up a lot of cards? If you can, for example, play a 1 mana or 2 mana Clockwork Giant, it could win the game for us in Arena. But if our opponent cycles through cards, don't know, 50-50 on that one. Finally, Junkbot, whenever a friendly mech dies, gain 2/2. Well, this is great if we have mechs, but we do not have mechs. If you can sacrifice a lot of small mechs with the Junkbot on the table, then it gets bigger and badder and scarier and nastier, and that 5 mana drop suddenly becomes like a 7, this can become 3/7, 5/9. You get the picture. Very nasty, very fast. So what be you fancying? Everyone looking for some giants. These are all horrible, but the giant Tigers. Looks like a giant. Next we've got an Archmage, a Mech Yeti, or a Scarlet Crusader. We've covered the Mech Yeti, we've rejected one, but maybe you guys fancy going for it now. The Archmage, 4 attack and 7 health, spell damage of 1. Now this actually fits our solid minion criteria. If you look at 6 mana and you look at the sheer amount of health for that 4 attack, take a look at it as being a more expensive, healed and ready version of an Injured Blade Master. An Injured Blade Master, when fully statted and healed, is 4 attack, 7 health. That kind of minion is pretty good. Remember, of course, we can throw down, should we draft them, things to make them tanks. They'll be able to make some good trades. They might be able to pick away at bigger attacking minions. The spell damage is a small bonus, so you could do worse than an Archmage if there's nothing better to pick. That made more sense before I said it rather than after. Mechanical Yeti, very nice and solid. And then Scarlet Crusader makes a good trade with that Divine Shield. It will take some damage before it disappears. And then when that Divine Shield disappears, and hopefully your Scarlet Crusader has perhaps traded a minion or done some damage to something to help you get it out of the way, then with that 1 health, poof, it's going to disappear very, very quickly. Archmage, Scarlet, I say Archmage, Yeti, who needs a Chillwind nowadays? That's an interesting point. The death rattle of giving your opponent a spare part is not always a great thing, particularly if you're playing like a Mage mirror match. Your opponent, draws a freeze, the freezing gizmo that can come from spare parts. Giving your opponent a spare part can be totally harmless or deadly. It really can be deadly sometimes. So there are some reasonable reasons if you're not playing a mech deck. I'd probably think about Chillwind Yeti rather than the Mech Yeti. People seem to be fancying Archmage for a bit of trading, a little bit of ability there, so let's go grab one of those. Fen Creeper, Mind Vision, or a Frost Wolf Warlord. Fen Creeper. Taunt, a really awkward tank to remove, 3 attack, 6 health. Really awkward before the Sludge Belcher. This was a very awkward mid-game tank to have. Mind Vision, we've got 1 D, 1 2. Frost of Warlord, this can be a finisher if we get it down with enough minions on the table. 1 attack, 1 health for each other friendly minion on the battlefield. What be you fancying? Some for Warlords, others for Creepers. Creeper. Taunts are always quite a good thing to have. Lurking like a creeper. Let's keep it moving. Next we've got a Stampeding Kodo, an Ancient Mage, or a Secret Keeper. Kodo, destroy a minion with 2 or less. We've got the Shrink Master, that could actually help us a lot. If we can shrink a minion's attack down to 2 or less, then we can combo the Kodo with the Shrink Master. 3 attack, 5 health. It's a solid minion anyway, so not a bad card at all. Ancient Mage, adjacent minions get spell damage 1. Good if we have more spells. Good if you're playing a spell deck. 2 attack, 5 health, very dangerous indeed. That can pretty much make the Trades of the Storm and Night give people spell damage too. And then Secret Keeper, gain 1/1 whenever you play a secret. We are a priest, we cannot play secrets, so not the strongest card for us. Universal Kodo. Universal Soldier has been picked. That soldier is the Kodo. Lovely choice. We've got Puddle Stomper, a Blood Cell Raider, or a Holy Neighbour. Puddle Stomper 2/3/2, a Murloc new with Goblins vs Gnomes, and again that's the definition of solid minion in an early game sense. It's got better stats, 3 attack, 2 health really than its average mana, so lovely. Blood Cell Raider, good if you have weapons, a solid minion if you don't. And then Holy Nova, we've got 1, do we want 2? Hey, 2 Novas could be pretty handy. Double the healing, double the damage, double the goodness in general. And at 5 mana, we're not overweight at that point yet. Okay, we're coming up to looking like 20 cards. That's going to be our second deck review point, so we'll keep on charging through. Looks like Nova gets the nod. So let's see what we've got now. Next, a friend or an enemy of the stream has just emerged, depending on what kind of mood you are in. We have Imp Master, Deathlord, and the Bomb Lobber. I'm going to cover Deathlord first. He is the saviour, or he is the enemy, depending on how you see him. He has got excellent stats for his mana cost, but one of the most horrific death rattles. Your opponent puts a minion from their deck into the battlefield. It could be one of their cheap, terrible minions, or it could be a legendary, horrible tank, doom-destroying, chaos-causing minion. And whenever I play a Deathlord, generally in arenas when you pick them, it tends to be the latter rather than the former. I've never had anything beneficial from a Deathlord. Imp Master, interesting card. Does 1 damage to itself at the end of every go. Summons a 1/1 imp. If you can buff those imps, then you basically get big table control with lots of tokens. Then a Bomb Lobber. 4 damage to a random enemy minion, 3 attack, 3 health. So low stats for its mana, but a powerful ability. You can make that 4 damage less random if your opponent's only got 1 minion. If you can trade your opponent's minions so they've got 1 perhaps with more health left, then Bomb Lobber, that 4 random damage becomes 4 directed, and then its stats are excellent. Everyone's going for the Lobber. Good stuff. Next we've got a Dread Corsair, a Noyotron, or an Unstable Ghoul. The Dread Corsair taunts cost 1 less per the attack of your weapon, so great if you've got a weapon, you could play it for free, depending on your attack. We don't, so that makes it an average tank for its mana cost. Noyotron is an excellent tank for its mana cost, given that it's got Divine Shield, and walls in and annoys people in the early game, something chronic. Last but not least, the Unstable Ghoul. Good, used to be played in decks that benefited from damaging their own minions, such as warriors using armor smiths, anyone using Acolyte of Pain. Now, given the rise of a Noyotron, and also the rise of Explosive Sheep, which does their 2 damage to all minions. This used to be used against aggro, it used to be used to damage its own minions. Now, a Noyotron and Explosive Sheep in Constructed have outdated it a little bit. But could still be a one. Could still have a little bit of use. Very, very good against aggro. Looks like an Noyotron may well be the nod. Let us see. And welcome to Zano, joining us live. Good to see you. So, I see an Noyotron shout. Are we going to be seeing any other shouts? Looks like a Noyotron is going to get the nod. And that puts us at 20 cards. So, while I describe these cards, and the folks in chat decide what they would like to go for. We will then do our second deck review. So, Gnomish Experimenter, draw a card if it's a minion, transform it into a chicken. I think that's all I need to say about that. Argent Commander, back in the day it used to cost less mana, or did it have more health? I think maybe it had slightly more health. But still a very good card. Throw it down, the Divine Shield will let it trade 4 damage, and then it may even do another 4 before it dies. 2 health isn't totally irremovable, but great for getting table control and removing nasty minions. Mana Bomber, the older brother of the Mad Bomber, of course, dealing 6 damage randomly split between all the characters, 5 attack, 4 health, solid enough stats. Who knows where that's going to go, but it's fun playing it. So, as chat decides between all of these, let's do our deck review. Rule number 1, review often. We are doing so. Rule number 2, take a look at the mana curve. We have a look in the middle of the screen. We've now got more of a mana curve developing. Got a bit more of a peak there, turn 5. Not huge amounts in the late game. Reasonable amounts 2 to 4. Let's then take a look at spells against minions. Vacancy Silence, Smite, Mind Vision, that's 3. Let's get on top. Thought Steal for 4, Shadow Madness for 5. 2 Holy Novas puts us up on 7. So that gives us 7 spells against 13 minions. So we've got a fairly hefty spell quotient to play. Spells will be a part of our success. And then, last but not least, let's play through 10 by 10. Silence and Smite we drop when we need. Mind Vision we play when we see. Annoyatron, Direwolf and Shrinkmeister we can play when we see or save depending on our table situation to try and get the buff and useful effects from these 2 cards in particular. Trog play when we see. Thought Steal pretty much also play when we see. And Blade Master Brute, so Storm Knight and Twilight Drake we play when we see, but if we'd rather play the Drake when we've got more cards in hand to give it more health. Shadow Madness we will hold off on until we've got a good situation. If we can trade 2 minions, destroy 2 enemy minions with it by trading them against each other, that's perfect Shadow Madness. Holy Novas we can throw down when the table's under threat or when we need a bit of healing, but generally when there's a big nasty table we'll get that sorted. Bomb Lobber Ditto, generally use it for control, direct the 4 damage if we can, otherwise that can just be thrown down. Fen Creeper Ditto, Stampeding Kodo when there's a 2 or less attack minion we want to get through, and remember we can of course combo the Kodo with the Shrinkmeister if we really want to. Throw down the Archmage when we see it, ditto the Temple Enforcer and Clockwork Giant. At the moment is our finisher. So wrapping it all up, our deck at the moment with 10 cards left to draw is looking, I would say, probably like just a tempo-ish style deck. We're going to be trying to play something reasonable each turn. We do have big late game finishers at the moment, depending on how our draw goes. We might be trying to finish in the mid to mid late game. This sort of 5 mana area, that's primarily the 2 Holy Novas, but we've got a lot of 5 mana minions. So things we may consider. I'd say in the early game we could perhaps use another strong minion or 2. Maybe just a couple of strong early game minions. Some tanks and taunts. We've only got 1 taunt. If we see any good tanks, they might be worth picking just to solidify mid game. And then some big mid to mid late game threats. Is there anything we can grab to really help us grab control of the table and win in the mid to mid late game? We'd ideally like to win sooner rather than later. In a long drawn out game it becomes anyone's game. If you can focus your draw a bit towards winning in that mid to mid late game, really really good. Okay, back to the draw, and people are thinking it's looking like Commander. I'm going to say that is a Commander pick. Next we have Holy Smite, Spectral Knight, Frost Wolf Grunt. We've got 1 Smite, would you like 2? The Frostwolf Grunt is a solid minion, passes the solid minion test for its mana cost, 2/2/2 and taunt. Lovely. Last, the Spectral Knight, a beautifully solid card for the mid game. Cannot be targeted directly by heroes or spell powers. Therefore, that 4 attack and 6 health, lovely and solid, will make trades, will trade minions off the table, will hurt your opponent's face. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Shout and chat, we've only got 1 taunt and nothing to create any. That is exactly the case. We have the Fen Creeper at the moment. We do not have anything to create any. We turned down a Sunfury Protector earlier in the game. 1 smite is 1 smite too many. Sounds like an ancient Chinese proverb, perhaps. Maybe something Confucius would go for. Spectral Knight seems to be a shout. Spectral as well. Okay, looks like we're going for some Spectral. All this talking. Thirsty work. Looks as though we are going to be going for a Spectral Knight. Next we've got a Grimescale Oracle, opening of the Murloc door potentially happening there. A Magma Rager, which we've already covered, and then Shadow of Death. So we've already covered Magma Rager. Grimescale Oracle, great if you have Murlocs. We have none, but good in a Murloc deck. So not a bad card necessarily in itself, but you need to pick Murlocs to get the most of a Grimescale Oracle. Last but not least, Shadow of Death. Destroying a minion with an attack of 5 or more. It's a basic card. If you're a new Hearthstone player, this is one of the ones you can earn just by leveling your priest up to level 10, and it's lovely and strong for removing big nasty minions. 3 mana for removing a 5 or more attack minion. Oh, people are going for Magma Rager? Really? Really? What kind of day have you had to pick Magma Rager? Get the Magma in. Shadow of Death. Magma Rager. I cannot tell. Is that a Magma Rager or a Shadow of Death from Mouldy? Best card in the game. Technically, the card in the game you're most likely to lose the match after playing. That is Magma Rager, statistically speaking. Death, Magma Death. SWD has just, but only just squeaked it because the strong Magma Rager fan club, and who can blame you? What a fun card it is. Temple Enforcer, Armani Berserker, or a Northshire Cleric. Armani Berserker enrages to be a 3 attack, 2 attack, 3 health, becomes 5 attack and 2 health. Apologies, just dropped an earbud there. Not the worst card, solid in the early game. We then have the Northshire Cleric, the fan of all priests everywhere, all around. Whenever a minion is healed, draw a card. We are a priest, we can heal. With our hero power, we also have, of course, Holy Novas, so that could give us some nice card draw if we can set it up behind a tank, if we can keep it alive. The Northshire Cleric is, again, one of those cards your opponent will see and try and pick off as soon as possible. Finally, Temple Enforcer. Did we actually get one of these? I think we've seen 2 of them before. We've got 1. Okay, we've already covered it. We've got 1. Would you like 2? I see Cleric, 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 Cleric. Cleric needs some card draw. That is a Cleric. Welcome to Sim. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. So next we have a Young Dragon Hawk. We've got a Raging Worgen or a Circle of Healing. That's an interesting 3-pick for you. The Young Dragon Hawk. Play it. If it survives, it will win Fury for 2 each turn until it dies, which with 1 health is probably quite likely, Okay, Raging Worgen. Enrage, win Fury in 1 attack. So 3/3 becomes 3/2, of course, if it takes damage. But then it can be swinging twice every turn, so that 3 attack becomes 6 attack. And remember, of course, always win Fury 2 separate attacks. If you really wanted to, you could remove 2 minions or something similar. Or you could just pile into the face and do lots of damage to your opposing hero. Raging Worgen, a nice 3 mana drop. Solid minion in every sense when it comes to Arena. Then Circle of Healing. Remember, it restores health to all minions, including your opponents. But then, if you played a Northshire Cleric, you will draw even for your opponent's minions that are being healed. So, good for us. We do, of course, have the combo of Injured Blade Master, Northshire Cleric. A reasonable amount of minions. Ooh, Worgen, Circle, Worgen, Circle. I see a couple of circles. What's it going to be? I see a couple of Worgens also. Circle, Circle, Worgen, Worgen. Worgen becomes a 4/2. Worgen becomes a... yeah, sorry, it does become a 4/2. You're quite correct. So, yeah, it's going to be doing 8 rather than 6. Thank you for pointing that out, Umbra, in chat. I kind of missed that 1 attack there, a little bit silly of me. So yeah, 3/3 becomes 4/2, and then win Fury. Pardon me there, I don't want to be coughing down the microphone. Those your mates going everywhere in chat, lovely stuff. So it looks as though that's a direct split down the middle between Circle of Healing and Worgen. I'm going to take my streamer's choice. I'm going to Circle in case we get an Orcanite. Okay, yeah, I've been persuaded. Let's go for a circle. I was almost going with Worgen there. Silence, Dancing Swords, or another Temple Enforcer. How many Temple Enforcers? I think this is the 4th one that we've been shown. So I'm not going to dignify that with another cover. You grabbed 1 Silence already. Do we want to grab 2? And then last but not least, Dancing Swords. Your opponent draws a card. So the stats, great for that 3 mana drop. However, of course, your opponent drawing a card, not amazing, but we do have silencers, we can deal with it. Which of those be you fancying? So with 26 out of 30, we can do a very rapid final review. So, mana curve wise, we were reviewing often. Number 2 mana curve, lots in 5 now. Turn by turn by turn, we're throwing things down in a tempo-ish fashion, something big each turn, most hopefully, and then finish the game potentially mid to mid-late. 5 mana onwards, there's a spike there. Our spells and minions, well, we have not, I think, picked any more spells. We've added a bunch of minions to the mix, so that should be good. Particularly Northshire Cleric was good. Turn by turn, we've now got a solid early game. We've got the Annoyatron, we've got Northshire. That feels good. In terms of our mid-game, we can be throwing down all of these minions. We can actually afford to keep Shrinkmeister back if we need to combo up with our Kodo. Our mid-game is now fleshed out a whole bunch more. The Ogre Brute will be very nice to play. I like the Novas. The Fen Creeper, a very nice choice. Spectral Knight also real solid packing a punch at that 5 mana mark. So we should look to be getting the game under control or even winning it in the mid to mid-late game. And then, finishing up, Clockwork Giant is our potential ace in the hole. Depending if our opponent has a bunch of cards in hand, Temple Enforcer can be buffing up too. So, back to the course. Silence, I see. Silence, 2 silences. I see Enforcer, I see a Swords, I see a Silence. I think that's a split 3-way. 3-way vote split. So, Silence, Swords, or Enforcer. Swords gives us a lot of punch in the early game. I'm gonna go with Swords. We do need some late game punch though. So next we've got a War Golem, a South Sea Deckhand again, or a Leponome. So we've covered the deckhand already. The Leponome, throw it down, does 2 damage when it dies if it's not silenced, or of course can potentially chip away for another 2 at some point. And last but not least, the War Golem, 7/7/7. That is a solid minion in terms of stats, the way that we define it. Absolute definition of a solid minion, the War Golem. So if we get anything that will create a tank in this late game, we've only got 3 cards or so left to pick, then that would be very good with that. But if not, no problem whatsoever. So we see gnomes. People fancying a bit of early game pressure there. Yep, I feel icky. Give me a big hug. One of those great Leponome quotes. The Leponome is in there. Stone Skin Gargoyle, an Explosive Sheep that we were referring to earlier, and another Stone Splinter Trog. We've got 1 Trog. Would you maybe like to? Up to you. The Explosive Sheep, 2 damage to all minions. If in the unlikely event we got rushed with very small minions, maybe against a Murloc deck, Explosive Sheep could be a lifesaver. But otherwise, it's a very situational card. And then Stone Skin Gargoyle. This card is great with Hobgoblin. At the start of your turn, restore this minion to full health. So if you can make trades with it, it heals itself every go at the beginning of your turn. However, it's only got that 1 attack. If you play it after a Hobgoblin minion constructed, Hobgoblin takes any 1 attack minion and buffs it by 2 attack and 2 health. So this 1/4 would suddenly become a 3/6. A self-healing 3/6 at that. Really, really good. Sukidoki. Trog. Shaun the Sheep. Couple of sheeps. Actually, a couple of trogs. Zano jumping in says get Shaun in. I'm pretty sure that means sheep, so sheep gets the vote. Next, the Angry Chicken rears its head again. The Crazed Alchemist or Abomination. Angry Chicken we've covered. The Crazed Alchemist gives us mad science, swapping the health and attack of a minion. It can be one of our minions. It can also be an enemy minion. So for our minions, if we had something with low attack and high health, for example, here's a good example. We have getting down for the king with the Stormwind Knight, he would go from 2 attack 5 health to 5 attack and 2 health. So that makes him suddenly a lot more dangerous. Last but not least, Abomination. 2 damage to all characters, again in the pre-Naxxramas, pre-Sludge Belcher days. Hearthstone's only been a year or so out, but of course those days are not so long ago, they feel a long time ago now. That 2 damage to all characters tank was anti-aggro. It was a brilliant tank, the Abomination. We see ABO, Abomo, I see Alchemist, Science, Alchemist. That is looking like some science for science, you monsters. Alchemy isn't science, it's pre-science. We've got philosophical debates going on there. Righty then, so that's an interesting deck. Let's do a quick review. We can throw down minions as we get them. I think we make good trades in the early game and try and win mid-game. We don't have huge amounts going on late game, but the Clockwork Giant. So that is our draft. Thank you very much for that. What we're going to do now, jump in, play a couple of games, see how this deck works out, and round off our Hearthstone. Probably about an hour or so. So 2 games, jump in and get those done. So let's see how your deck works out in the wild. Alrighty then. Oh, and the first thing we get is a mirror match. No legendaries, no legendaries. No legendaries on this game. On this occasion. Clockwork Giant is 7. Now we're going first. I'm gonna mulligan. Tempting to keep these 2. But we've got more early game options. Worst come worst, I'm gonna do that. The reason that 4 attack is great against Priest is because Shadowwood Pain destroys 3 or less attack minions, and Shadowwood Death, as we saw, will remove 5 or more attack minions. So 4 attack, harder for a Priest to remove. Really, really good to take a look at. Okay, we have a Circle of Healing. I can see Thought Steal there. So at the moment we've got all of the 3 drops anyone could fancy. In comes a coin, 2 drop on turn 1. Very aggressive, and the definition of a solid minion. Fairy Dragon, 3 attack and 2 health. Okay, still nothing we can really be doing here, but turn next I can Injured Blade Master. I can Circle of Healing if I really want, and we can start getting to work on these minions on my opponent's side of the table. Okay, Holy Nova would help us strip all of these down. I know that I'm not going to get the healing benefit, but I'm going to get a nasty minion, and I can start trading all of these smaller things away from. Can anyone recommend a game on Good Old Games? I think Rogue Squadron is on there. The Star Wars stuff. Grim Fandango remake? GOG.com. There's loads of... GOG is great for some of the older PC download games. They've got Star Wars Rogue Squadron. They've got X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. I think they've got Grim Fandango. There's also some stuff on GOG that occasionally you might not see on Steam as well. Some of the older stuff, particularly remakes of sort of really old games. So they've got like Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis on a floppy disk somewhere and on a CD. But you can buy that, for example, for £5. So some really cool games there, and they seem to have got some good Star Wars games up there as well. So well worth a look. Okay, back to Hearthstone. Priest deciding what they're going to play. In comes a Wolf Rider for the charge. And just going straight for face. Painful indeed. So, a Shrinkmeister is going to help me make some good trades. A Holy Nova next turn is going to remove all of this from the table. So, if I can hang on in one more turn, I've got to make sure that doesn't quite die. Now, options my opponent might go for trading. Probably won't trade both of these away. So, I will heal myself by 2. I'm actually going to heal up this minion. I'm going to throw down a Shrinkmeister. I'm going to offer that trade as well. So, this is really just a trade waiting to happen. My opponent may well just decide to destroy that Shrinkmeister. I'm trying to sponge a little bit of damage off my hero by dropping that down. I'm kind of just throwing it out there as bait. So Holy Nova is pretty much guaranteed to be on next drop. It's going to wipe my opponent's table. It's going to heal me up a bit. Ooh, Velen's Chosen. The reason I should have removed that earlier. That's now a +2/+4, 5/5 Wolf Rider. ugly indeed, and that is just going to hit me through the face. It's nice that I can trade that away. Okay, so no real alternative but to do this. However, I'm half health down. I barely have table control with the injured Blade Master. Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds, yep, absolutely awesome. Have definitely played that. Debate in the chat at the moment, if you're on YouTube, is what games would you recommend from GOG.com? Some really cool stuff there for all you PC gamers. Righty then. Our opponent mulling over, in comes an Ogre Brute, which we also have, and then a spell, Crazed Alchemist, just getting minions on the table, swapping. But the important thing is you notice that by swapping the attack and health, I now have a maximum of 4 health, so I can't actually heal that up anymore. Smart move by my opponent, actually. However, we have some tricks of our own, and the tricks of our own is trading for the table. My opponent has Smite, then my Valiant Injured Blade Master is going to go down. But we now have table control and 8 damage on the table. So, fingers crossed. We're going to make it work. In comes an Acolyte, that's going to be card draw, and of course if any minion dies, the Flesh-Eating Ghoul gains attack. We do not like that in the slightest. How can we make some good trades? I think firstly let's heal this up. We can throw down an Annoyatron. I can punch that off the table going for very hard control, but remember of course if my opponent throws down a circle of healing like I did, we're in a bit of trouble. Now because my opponent's a priest, this is a really good time to Thought Still. 2 cards, I've got a Cult Master, I've also got a Mass Dispel, silence all enemy minions and draw a card. There's an interesting card to draft in an arena. Not bad, we'll see how it rolls. Got Shadow of Death there for some control, liking the thought of that. Cult Master, never underestimate Cult Master in an arena context. I've sacrificed so many minions in just trading away stuff I trade away anyway. If you have a Cult Master on the table, you're just totally replenishing a handful of cards. Really, really strong. But opponent dropping those solid minions, drawing cards with that, with the Raging Worgen, Enraged Wind Fury and +1, that's definitely going to be a focus of our attention. So, nice options here. Now I can just buff this up one more attack, and this is where Direwolf Alpha is great because I can remove that Direwolf. That would be very awesome. I could just go straight for a Mass Dispel. That would certainly prevent the card draw, but I think that what we probably want here is really nice table control, table position. So I'm going to do this by healing that. I'm then going to jump on in. Let's remove. Let's buff all that up. This is really hard control I'm going for. I could have gone for my opponent's face a lot more, and you can see that I'm still quite vulnerable to a Holy Nova. Mass Dispel. I'm going to save that Mass Dispel just in case a nasty tank or something hits the table. So I'm going to throw down a Cult Master. Reason for the Cult Master hitting the table, as we just described, if we sacrifice a few smaller minions, then we're going to get loads of card draw off that. So having been very down in the early game, unless a Holy Nova, unless something very nasty clears our board, which is possible, note that we've only got 2 health on everything, 1 Explosive Sheep could cause a lot of problems, but we get at least 1 card draw. Out comes our Mad Science with the Crazed Alchemist. 3 cards in hand at 8 mana, down goes the Cult Master, and down goes Northern Farseer, healing back up. This would be a really good time for Mind Vision. This is a silly play because we're just going to steal whatever that card is. Sometimes I just can't resist, you know. Temple Enforcer. That's excellent, because what that means is that we can pretty much just trade one of these straight off the table, and we can heal up a minion. Very exciting indeed. So what's the best way to go about this? I think if I really want to try and sponge something off the table, I'm going to give the spongeability to this card. So that means that I can prevent my opponent from drawing more cards. They've pretty much got no cards in hand. I could go Hyper Control, but at this stage there's no real need. I may as well just go for face. I've got a lot of damage on the table. It's going to be very hard for my opponent to turn around and bring this back. Still vulnerable of course to that Holy Nova, but I know that they've got the Temple Enforcer. That's now 2/5 tank. In comes the 3 attack Earthen Fast here, potentially going to make some trades. Let us see how this goes. See, Sedge says on the subject of cheap games, you can get Hitman Absolution for a mere 69 pence on the Humble Bundle. Humble Bundles, brilliant stuff. Supporting charity, amazing games, what is not to like? Do we have lethal? We do have lethal. And hey, I should never dismass Dispel. It is worse the game. To the face. Or baiting. So, that's a really good example of our deck just having something solid to play every single turn, making decent trades, and then winning in the mid to mid-late game. We did not need more than that. Okay, I think before I end our episode, we've just about got time for one, maybe 2 more games, depending on how quickly this game runs. So, good game there, was a mirror match. We did manage to just make sure we played decent minions turn by turn by turn by turn. Made good trades on the table where we needed to. I perhaps played hyper safe rather than going to face there, but we got our opponent in such a corner with no cards that we just overwhelmed them when it came to minions on the table. Right, we've got a mage for our second game. Let's see exactly how close to a mech mage my opponent has managed to draft. Back go the Kodo and the Bomb Lobber. I'll keep the Dancing Swords, that's not too bad. And in come a Circle of Healing and Holy Nova. So a little bit problematic. Again, we find ourselves stuck without those early game options, but a Leper Name is fine. Happy to grab that. So, what have we here? We have Leper Name. Opponent swinging into an Abusive Sergeant. Probably just going to trade that off the table next go. Northshire Cleric, I am not going to play. That could be my opponent would most likely try to fireball and remove that out of the way. So let's save the Northshire. I'm just going to attack to face, do that damage. Offer my opponent the trade. My opponent can of course Fire Blast that away, leave it with the 2, but I'd rather get some damage to the face. If we were playing very aggressively, there's a reasonable argument for just trading the table away there. Taking out the Abusive Sergeant. So perhaps knowing the fireball was coming, really just removing the minion would have been a better play. Let's see if it helps or hinders us. In comes a 3-drop. And Raging Worgen comes out, and then we'll probably see the trade. My opponent of course can damage this using Fire Blast, which is very nasty. So I am going to pretty much throw this down and say, okay, you can hit me for 4 and then trade and draw a card. 2 mana of course would be taken if you wanted to activate that Worgen, but that Worgen, remember, will be doing 8 damage to me. So on turn 3 that's pretty nasty. An opponent is going for that. 4 damage to face, trade this away. I'd imagine that's just going to be 8 damage straight to my face. 1. Swing. So I'm actually contemplating making the trade. Gone for the trade. Happy to draw the card. I'm actually happier with that. Anytime you don't attack your opponent's face is pretty much healing. Shrug is no stupid. I've got nothing to heal at this point in time. I'm going to heal myself. My opponent is a mage. One would assume that they might be slinging around a few spells here and there. But we will see. Getting into turn 4. Now note that my opponent's hand filling up. I could actually throw down a Clockwork Giant next go. It's going to be a big bait if they've picked a Polymorph. Or indeed, maybe even a Big Game Hunter. Stranger things have happened. But a Clockwork Giant on turn 5 if my opponent plays no cards, which is quite unlikely, I would very much appreciate. Otherwise, next turn, if the Trog takes damage, then in comes a Harvest Golem. And there we go, and you see that just makes all the difference. However, this is where the king of arena tanks, the Fen Creeper, comes into play. 3 attack and 6 health. Now, unless my opponent's got a fireball that zaps that straight through the centre, it's going to be quite tough to remove. There we go, called it. I get the 3 attack. Opponent's going to try and trade away the Trog. Probably going to go to face, I would imagine. but I can just cement my position. Clockwork Giant is going down next go. 6 mana drop, very happy with that. Opponent just going straight for base, okay, nothing for me to heal. Temple Enforcer, now that's a tempting play. Not only giving my Trog huge health, but dropping a nice solid minion as well. It's kind of a 2 for the price of 1. Clockwork Giant is going to be a bait for removal. I'm going to test it. Let's go for it and see if it sticks. Got the Circle of Healing in hand as well. That will give us a nice heal. All minions, we could draw 3 cards potentially, even more depending on what my opponent plays and how they play on this turn. A Circle of Healing and a Northshire Cleric, 3 cards for 1 mana. Amazing, amazing value when it comes to mana efficiency. Annoyatron doing its annoying thing. Dark Iron Draw powering up to 4, probably meaning it's actually going to, yep, see removal. And my Clockwork Giant, in spite of being a bit of a nutcase, is now stuck and wondering exactly how it's going to be wrecking through this particular table. Well, it's got options. Suddenly got 11 Clockwork Giants and smash into that. Done 1. Now I could throw down the Cleric. I'm not going to, because we will probably see, I think, a little trade with these two taking the table for this, or they'll go all out for my Clockwork Giant. It's not worth clericking and circling for just 1 card draw, in my opinion. We might be able to get a bit more. At the moment, with those minions on table, they're sacrificed. Arcane draws 2. Sadly, we've got no Trogs to take advantage of that. Annoyatron. Lots of low health there. If I can smash through one of those, we're close to a lethal situation. Tinkertown Tech. Wonderful when you have mechs on the table. That's now a lovely 3 mana, 4 attack and health drop with the additional spare pot. And there, as expected, is the trade. And attack to face. Again, without the minions, it's all well and good having the clockwork. Almost said chocolate for some reason, Clockwork Giant, but if I still need to be punching through. So do we have Holy Nova part removes an enemy minion through a less attack. I can't silence this. I can trade one into the other. That's not the kind of optimally situation that we were looking for. So let's take a little look. Archmage, well, that gives us a very solid table with potential to sort of run through for the victory. We'll see Tinkertown Tech trying to trade against us. I think let's go for the Archmage for bodies on the table. I'm gonna... No, that's not gonna work. I'm gonna keep that nice and healed. They're still threatening very, very nastily indeed. The Chocolate Giant indeed. It's like the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant, the Big Chocolate Giant. Clockwork, chocolate. Same difference. Holy Nova is now 3 to all enemies, of course, given that we've got a bit of spell damage with our Archmage. So, do we have lethal? No. Do we have lethal in 2 turns? Yes. My opponent throws down a nasty 3 attack minion. Maybe we could do something with a bit of a shadow gladness. Shadow madness and gladness. Should these take 2 damage, I can draw 2. Down goes a Force Tank Max. Ouch, that's going to be used to trade against mine. Now is a race to the face. Interesting options. So here's a game. You can shrink my stuff. Can gain control of the enemy with 2 less attack. I'm just going to sacrifice that off the table. That makes me feel... Don't blink, says the Archmage. Makes me feel a whole lot better. Healed and up. Could throw down the Cleric, makes it a target. The Force Tank is most likely to take this out next turn.
Is someone injured?
We'll take the risk. I'll take the risk and throw it down. So we have 9 health left on our opponent. We have a lot of damage on the table. Remember, of course, flame strikes and such things could reduce us to tears in a matter of milliseconds. So let's not count our chickens just yet. We will not count our angry chickens before they have enraged. So this is feeling good. Feeling good for a 2-0. proudly says PG in the chat, steampunk is based around chocolate steam-powered machines. That's strangely definitions of steampunk. 9 mana, opponent throws down a frostbolt, taking away the damage. Might have been better served freezing my clockwork giant. Depends on what that remaining 7 mana is going to do. We may not be out of the woods just yet. We have lethal, but with 7 mana there's plenty of damage you can do. Down goes a Skillwind Deity. And out comes a Sun Fury. Very nice. So we need to punch through for the win, and I believe we have some lethals. I cannot kill the Explosive Sheep, but we can Holy Nova. Was there a better play here? Yes, there was. There was. I've made a boo-boo. But, I was almost going to make an even larger boo-boo. I was going to throw down a circle through them, that would have just healed up everything I'd done to that force tank. Very foolish. Very foolish indeed. I'm quite happy to get that removed. Shadow of Death, oh, even better. I don't even need to sacrifice my little North Shard, and then we do this. Yay, that worked out really nicely. I managed to bring it back. We can get down for the King with the Storm at Night. Another Thought Steal. Let's see what we can steal from this mage. I'd love a fireball. A lovely way to finish off. Oh, that is an anti-kill bot, just when we thought the fat lady was going to be singing. It is not over. There has been no opera singers or that kind of thing going on. Thought Steal, Thought Steal, Explosive Sheep, Stormwind Knights. These options could be bringing us glory and victory, and they have indeed. Well played to our opponents. Clockwork Giant actually coming up very, very nicely and doing business for us. So there we go. That is going to be it for this episode. 2 wins. We've had a very nice start there. Thank you so much for tuning in. So what did we do? We drafted our arena deck as per usual, and then proceeded to play a couple of games. We managed to have a nice mirror match against a priest and grabbed it straight through against a mage. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you're on YouTube, come join us sometime. You can find us on twitch.tv/FailCraft Cast. If I move this up just a little bit here, Monday through Friday, schedule down there in the bottom left. Do check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/FailCraft Casts. Loads of more arenas, quick 2-minute deck guides for Hearthstone, little deck introductions, a few new player concepts, all kinds of stuff there as well. Last but not least, website failcraft.org, and we'll always tweet on @FailCraft Casts every day, Monday through Friday, telling you what time we're going to be going live. A little guide on time zones in the bottom left there. So thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully not see a black screen, but see you sometime soon, and take it easy.